Okay. So hello everybody, this is a Footsteps Festival event with Richmond Stace, the pain coach. Footsteps is a co-production between people with lived experience of pain, clinicians and academics, and we run these kind of events quite often. We have a large backlog of events which you can see on our YouTube channel. This is the second in a series which you can check out again on our YouTube channel. And so I would very much like to introduce Richmond Stace, the pain coach. Over to you, Richmond.
Hi, thanks, Nikki. How are you doing? How is everyone? You okay? I can see a few faces. Nice to see you. Thanks for joining. And then people are probably going to, well, hopefully listen to the recording, and then you can share it around and share it with people. And that's quite an interesting point, actually, or important point, because although you could be the person who's experiencing pain, living the experience of pain in your world, there are people around you, and we're perhaps not so separate as we might think. In fact, there's a lot of things that we think of as being separate that perhaps aren't as separate as we might think. So, for example, the mind, the body, the brain, and the world sort of feel like all these different things, like there's some sort of boundary between them, and I suppose there sort of is. We got skin and various membranes and things that surround things, but essentially, this is more fluid and porous than we might think, and certainly, when you pause for a moment, you might think about how we relate to each other, how we affect each other, how we potentially change each other. So any kind of information that you take on board, trying to understand your pain, it could be really helpful for people around you, loved ones, friends, colleagues, perhaps, to also gain some understanding, so that they can learn about how perhaps they can support you, help you, guide you, just be there. Sometimes it's just being there, I think, isn't it? Sometimes you don't want, we come in and say, oh, this has happened, and we don't necessarily want someone to immediately go, oh, well, look, you should do this. Have you tried? Have you seen? I know, I saw this thing in the paper and all that. Sometimes we just want someone to listen, or a hug, or just a bit of empathy. So that was just something that came to mind. We did this before. I think I spoke a little bit longer than I planned to on pain. I think I went on about it for about 20 minutes in the end. Oh, we've got a dog joining us. That's cool. So I thought this time we could plow into some questions, and then maybe some of those themes will emerge. They probably will, because it's always useful to kind of go over again particularly the model that's making it, or made its way to the top of the tree, really, and is really helping us to understand people's experiences, but also make sense of it in terms of what is measurable and objective, because there's such a discord between those two at times. I mean, it's effectively, they are completely different. What someone feels and what you can see on some sort of test or with your eyes or whatever, they're different things. One's a lived experience, one's subjective, one's objective. And I think, the biomedical model always seeks to look for something objective, measurable, can be seen, anatomical, structural, to explain pain, and it just doesn't. Basically, it doesn't, because it's an experience. It's being generated just like every other lived experience, whether it be, things like, I posted something today, things that are real that we can't see, was the headline, or something like that. And it includes love, hunger, thirst, itch, pain, compassion, all these things that we really feel, and but you can't see them. And I always wonder why it is that so often, I mean, a lot of people I see, and I hope you haven't had this experience, but it seems pretty common, not being believed or fully believed or validated. But if you said, oh, I've got this person that I love, they go, oh, yeah, no, I get that. But I've got this pain that you can't see. Well, you sure? It makes no sense to me at all, but that seems to happen, which is totally wrong and just shows misunderstanding. But unfortunately, that sort of approach just adds to, well, trauma, really. It's that's a bit of a heavy word, but I think in many cases it is traumatic to have these repeated situations on top of what's already going on, not being believed, not being validated, not being heard, not being seen, everyone being squeezed through the same holes, which is how a healthcare system works, rather than seeing a person and then working out what we should be doing to help you. So it needs to be totally turned on its head. So I keep banging that drum. Other people do as well. There aren't that many of those drums, though. We need more of those drums to get louder. So having said that, that's sort of a little intro, get my vocal cords going. Who's got a burning question to ask? Which you can tap into the chat.
Mark, did you say you had a question? Do you want to go first?
Yes. So the question I wanted to ask is, it's quite a big one for me, and that's around pain management and the experience of pain, and that is, can pain management actually reduce your pain and even possibly eliminate it? I mean, it seems to me that a lot of times with pain, we just sort of with pain management, that we we're trying to avoid flare-ups and improve things, but actually the expectation is it won't actually improve the pain. So yeah, squaring that circle.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm just jotting down a couple of things you said there so that I can try and get it all in for you and give a solid answer. Yeah, I mean, look, pain management. To me, the word management always strikes of well, this is kind of it, and what you are experiencing now is what you're going to keep experiencing, and traditionally pain management programs would certainly near the beginning or even start by saying, well, we're not here to help you ease your pain, we're here to help you cope. Now, I've never agreed with that. And I cannot understand why you would put that message out there at all. I've heard no decent explanation for it. It really, really puzzles me, because at the end of the day, we are here to serve and to help people to make their lives better and to ease their suffering, which inevitably means to ease pain. Now, what that looks like, there's no way that we can guarantee any outcomes or results or anything like that. So we have to be very realistic. But can things get better? Yes. Can pain change and get better? Yes. It's less likely to do so if you keep being told it won't, though, because your beliefs about your pain play such a big role in that very experience. So this is what has been discovered in more recent years, although instinctively it kind of makes sense as well. So if you've got a sort of a narrative going on, well, this is my pain, I've been told I've got to live with it, then that essentially becomes your destiny. You live within those parameters. Your body systems don't look out for any other evidence to suggest that something better is happening, even if it is. So it's fascinating, when I talk to people and ask them a few questions and then listen to them tell me about their experiences, they might begin by saying things like, it's the same, it's always the same, it's always painful. When I have flare-ups, I go backwards, those kinds of things. And at the right time, I asked them a bit more about that, because fundamentally we can't go backwards unless you own a time machine, which as far as I know, no one does. So we can only go forward. So you can't go back. And if you're telling yourself you're going back, it's really disempowering. And that's a problem, because you actually want to get into resourceful states where it becomes apparent things that you can do to be on your path to making things better. And it's the same kind of thing with that message to self, oh, it's the same. Now, fundamentally, nothing can ever be the same, because each moment is different. That's something to bear, like impermanence, you might have heard of, is a Buddhist tenet. It's really important insight to have, Because if you're telling yourself things are the same, then that becomes your reality. It is your reality, but it's not the reality, because the reality is every moment is different. And when you start to examine your own experiences more closely, which takes some courage, but there's ways of doing that, you start to realize actually it's like that, moment to moment to moment. And with the flare, I think, Mark, one of the things you said there was about trying to avoid flare-ups. Well, that's like trying to avoid raindrops if it's raining. You can't control that. You can't do it. You set yourself up to follow a particular path, doing certain things. There are always ups and downs because there are so many variables. There are so many hidden biological states, so many things going on in the world that you can't control. That you will, and sometimes you won't even know why. I mean, it could be because you've done a bit more, or you didn't sleep as well, or something's different, or you were upset or stressed, or all these things can definitely play a role in increasing the symptoms, because anything that's threatening to you as a whole, as an organism, will potentially strike up the protective mechanisms again, and they'll predict that that's the best explanation for what's going on right now, and so you feel more pain. That's what happens. So this sort of brings in the big A word, doesn't it? Acceptance, which makes some people go, which I totally understand. And until you really define it. So acceptance isn't giving in or anything like that. It's just being able to say, hey, this is what's happening right now. And this is such a valuable tool or skill might be a better way to put it, because you can practice it and you'll get better at it. Whatever's happening now is already happening. So you can hear my voice. There's nothing you can do about that. If you're in pain, or there's a flare up and you've got more pain, there's nothing you can do about that. Now that sounds grim. So let me move on to the next bit very swiftly. What you can do is think about how you relate and respond. In other words, how you create the conditions then to get better. That's the bit you can control. You can't control the first bit, but you can control the second bit. So that's what we learn and practice and put our energies into. So it's not so much what's happening, it's how you relate to it that matters. And that's why understanding your pain is key, because if you understand it, you're able to realize that in most situations, unless you've actually injured something, which is probably unlikely, it's not the same call to action when you feel that pain. You haven't done something, you haven't injured anything. There's just enough evidence in this moment that your body systems are predicting pain as the best explanation based on something like this that's happened before. It could be a thought, a state, a place you're in, something that you can hear. There's just enough evidence in this moment to suggest that there could be something threatening based on what you've experienced before. So there's kind of a weighting towards prior experiences that's then creating what you're feeling now, as opposed to actually what's going on right now is not a lot.
That's brilliant.
So that was an extremely long answer.
Sorry, there's a few more questions. Are you all right to crack on?
Yeah. Does that kind of capture some of the stuff that you asked, Mark, just to make sure?
No, yeah, that's really useful. Thank you. Yeah, and I think it also relates to so there were a few other questions along similar lines in the chat as well.
Let me scroll back and I'll go through them.
I was going to link two to start off with. So we've got Chris asking, can you suggest a good way to get started for somebody who feels overwhelmed by the pain, which then links to Susie's question, a few down, which says, will this pain ever go away? Are there meds that can take it all away? I think those two are fairly linked. Yeah, okay. Yeah, this is meaty stuff. Okay, so we're gonna have to roll with this a bit. So there's going to be times when you could be overwhelmed by the pain, absolutely. That in those moments you literally do what you can to get through it, hopefully knowing that however bad it is in that moment, it's going to change.
And then you're going to try and do some things to hasten that change. So you're going to ride those waves at those moments. Now, when things are calmer and you're practicing various skills, so things like a rain practice or a breathing practice or whatever it is, whatever skills that you're learning, and there are many things. You rehearse and practice and practice and practice, so that when you're in a more tricky moment, your skills are more honed and you get more effect. This is, this whole thing is a process. It's learning. It's not like the end result. This is things that you do over and over and over and over and over. So it's akin to learning a musical instrument or a language, and developing skills and following a path that's very windy, up and down, and often dimly lit. So you're kind of finding your way as well. It's tough. It's really tough, but it's doable. As the lived experiences here and others will say. So kind of a good way to get started is to start learning some of the basic skills, but that has to be off the back of understanding your pain. So for example, if you go back and listen to the first episode, I talk a lot about the model, using the predictive processing model. Now, this is still fairly new in pain. It's not wholly proven, but it's probably the best explanation we've ever had. And there's lots of work being done by some really, bright and caring people to uncover this more. And if anyone follows me, you'll pick up on this stuff and the people who are doing this work, because I often share what they're doing. So understanding your pain is the first step, and then this is skill-based work, but with a very clear direction of where you're going. So this will tie in, I think, hopefully to Susie's question. You need a clear picture of success. What are you working towards? But you've got to realize that you're here, not there. You want to be there, you don't want to be here. That's a cause of suffering. So this is tricky stuff, because our human minds want to be where we're not, obviously, but we are here. And the more we can accept it and actually be there and start turning towards what's going on, then that kind of skill, that kind of presence is what allows us to see what's really happening and to really start transforming the experience. It doesn't seem like the natural thing to do. The natural thing to do seems to get away, to fight, to resist, all that sort of stuff. But none of that works in the long term. In the short term, maybe it'll help. But it doesn't transform anything. You only transform things by really learning about your own experiences. But I wouldn't suggest doing that when you're overwhelmed. It has to be within the window of tolerance. So I'll give you an example. I was working with a chap today. We did a couple of things, actually. So he has CRPS, and we spoke, and very temperature sensitive. So putting his limb into lukewarm water really burns, and putting it into cold water is like freezing. So in other words, his reality are those things. That's what he's feeling. It's real, but that's not the reality. The reality is it's lukewarm water. Remember that his experience is being generated by his systems, not by the water. And also remember that it's not your tissues that create any kind of it. Your tissues do not generate experiences. So if it's your back or your knee or your foot or your hand or whatever, muscles, joints, bones, tendons, nerves, ligaments, fascia, anything else? Skin, fat. I think that's probably, I can't think of any others. Anyway, you get the picture. They don't have the ability to produce anything. Experience-wise, our body systems are generating a best guess of what's going on in our body. In fact, your body and the world you don't experience that directly at all. You just experience a best guess of what's there. Sounds a bit weird, doesn't it? Because when you look out, well, you can see your screen, you can see your room, it feels like it's just there. But you're just experiencing your version of it. And it's very moldable. Think about illusions, think about magic, think about how easily we get duped by stuff. Marketeers and advertising people are very good at that, because we're generating these. Now, that puts us in a really powerful position, because if that's the case, then we need to work out how we can get our systems on side and how we can use certain skills and strategies to help shape a direction that we want, i.e. getting better. Tying to Mark's original question, this has got to be about getting better and focusing on the step to take now. So in relation to Susie's question, it's a question that people often want to ask. When will my pain be better? Will it ever go away? You can't answer those questions though. That's the tough reality. So what we can do is we can change the question to, what's my best action? What's the best thing I can do right now that's in line with where I want to go? Because whatever question you ask yourself, you're going to try and answer. So if you're sat thinking to yourself, oh, is this pain ever going to go away? Well, it won't while you're thinking that, because that's like saying, don't think of elephants. It's keeping pain on the agenda. Even saying to yourself, oh, I'm pain-free today, or this is a pain-free moment, brings pain back onto the agenda. Simple life rule: focus on what you want, not what you don't want. I want to get fit, I want to get stronger, I want to be more sociable, I want to move better, I want to be able to make a cup of tea, I want to walk to the bathroom, I want to take a shower on my own. Whatever it is, doesn't matter what it is. That's the focus. Because when you're asking yourself, right, how am I going to do that? Well, that's a picture of success. Then you can work out the steps. I mean, maybe with the help and guidance of someone, a therapist, clinician who really understands pain. Work out the steps to get there. So going back to the example I was giving, the chap with the putting his hand. So if he puts one hand into the lukewarm water, it feels lukewarm. If he puts his other hand in, it burns. Now, it's important when you're doing this kind of thing to stay within the window of tolerance. So we might do some rehearsal beforehand. We might do some imagery, that kind of thing, or other things to create some calm. Putting one hand in and feeling the lukewarm, that's a reference point. I can focus on that. That's the norm. That's the reality. And then putting the other hand in, and then you're seeing what's happening, but you're then coaching yourself. Okay, I can feel burning there. So you're kind of labeling it. That creates a little bit of distance, so you're not getting so caught up. There is burning, whatever word captures the experience accurately. And it may just be for a few seconds to start with, but you're reassuring yourself, look, there's nothing happening. This is just systems amplifying what's going on. They're making their best guess here because of this protect state. And this is information. This is information. It's telling me that I need to work on some stuff to update these predictions so I can have a different experience. So you're kind of coaching yourself through it. So that's one example. Now, I don't know any of your situations, so this is not direct advice, just to hasten to add. I'm just sort of illustrating examples there, because I obviously know the guy and his backstory in detail. We've worked together and we've gone through a lot of the understanding pain stuff as well, so that he was essentially reducing the threat, which is really important. So does that go some way to answering those questions?
That's great. Interestingly, you're talking about sort of essentially graded exposure. It's a bit more complex than that, I know, but that's how I decondition most of my trigeminal neuralgia triggers. I used to be able to go out in the wind and the rain, and that kind of process is exactly why I can now cycle in the rain with no problems because I worked hard at it. I added positive reinforcement in as well because I'm an animal trainer person as well, so that worked for me.
Yeah.
We've got some more questions. I think Cara's question sort of links to sort of pretty much what you've just said, but maybe with a bit more nuance. She says she was told by her healthcare professional in a rather patronizing way not to hope for that day when the pain reverts from chronic to episodic, but instead to learn to live well with the pain. Do you agree with this thinking?
Well, I mean, in a sense, you know, I think that trying to live your best life is just a thing that everyone, whether you have pain or not, is just an approach that you decide to take. You know, everyone has their own philosophy in life. You may not have realized what yours is. And actually, a really interesting exercise is to try and nail down your current philosophy in life in less than 20 words. Because all your decisions are being pushed through that. So you start to understand a bit about why you're doing things. You know, what's the leaning of your mind? I mean, things like meditation, which I think is very helpful in many ways because it gives you these insights. When you start learning about how you think and the habits of thought you have, because those thoughts are embodied. You know, thoughts aren't here. Your thinking and the way that you think is hugely influenced by the state of your body and where you are and what you're doing. So, you know, how you're acting and behaving and thinking and how the world's appearing to you, these are all entwined together. So we can kind of use that. So, I mean, this is called inactivism. We can use that as a way of, again, understanding people's experiences and then looking at practical ways of doing things. You know, finding the way of approaching it. So living well with pain is a phrase that you see quite a lot. And remember what I said before about, you know, general life rule is focus on what you want rather than what you don't want, because then you're putting your energy behind that. So the biggest pain reliever that we have is by getting into better states, by reconnecting with what matters. So people, places, the planet, but it's often bit by bit. You know, a lot of people I first work with, they're scared to go outside, maybe scared to leave the room they're in, or that sort of thing. So, you know, by developing the understanding and then working, I mean, Nikki mentioned graded exposure. I mean, it is because you work within the window of tolerance to get consistent results. And that might just be a few reps of this, that, and the other. You might be moving or breathing or some task or whatever, and you're doing it. And then when you kind of think, yeah, I'm getting to grips with that, then you move towards the edge. And then you explore it a bit. And so gradually and organically it builds. Because, you know, still a lot of people feel that they have to push. There's a part of them that says you've got to push. Someone was saying to me earlier today that, you know, they managed to make a cup of coffee and to grip a teaspoon, and that's, you know, someone had said to them that was a win, that was a success, and he was like, no, it's not. And we talked about acknowledging the conditions, and once they acknowledged the conditions, then shifted their position on that. So actually, it was a success. You know, that was more of a success doing that than doing some kind of weight training in the past because of the circumstances. They're different. So I think, I mean, Cara sort of, it's interesting the bit you put in brackets there in a rather patronizing way. You know, there's a tone, isn't there? So it's not just words, it's the delivery, it's how it's delivered, when it's delivered, and the opportunity for you to explore, you know, what do you mean by that? What does living well mean? So there's actually a lot in that to explore. It could be a useful strategy, but if it wasn't delivered, you know, if it doesn't land in the right way, for what reason, you know, maybe they meant well and you kind of weren't in the same space at that time. Not your fault, just that's what happens. you know, communication is a precarious thing, and particularly with such emotive stuff, it's tricky. It's tricky, and but yeah, I think that the living well bit is a useful principle.
Thank you. I always see the living well as it's part of the path, isn't it? It's not, I mean, some people might stop there, some people might carry on to recovery. And again, recovery means different things to different people anyway. So there's a lot of nuance which is often missed, isn't there, in this?
Yeah.
So going back to when you said to take pain off the agenda, oops, just me. Dawn has said when she tries to take pain off the agenda, she ends up in a boom and bust situation where she's trying to be her old self, as opposed to taking into account approaching the situation in a new way. Just have you any suggestions in how to avoid this?
Well, Dawn, you kind of already answered it yourself. So if you're taking pain off the agenda and focusing on what it is you want to do, it sounds like what you might mean is that you're just going, oh bugger it, I'm just going to keep going, or I'm just going to do it anyway. So you're not acknowledging the circumstances there, you know, that window of tolerance is an important principle to follow. So in other words, most of the time, that's what you're doing. You're within it, and it varies depending on how you are, how you slept, how you're feeling, what you're doing. So it's always, and that's why being present and being able to check in, right? How am I? I've got this thing to do. What's the best way of doing it? I reckon. And you're always making a prediction, so you never know what the future is going to hold. So you're making your best guess about how it could be. And then you try and curate the situation as best you can. You know, everything's a practice, isn't it? Everything we do is a practice for the next time we do it. So say, I don't know, it's going out for coffee with friends. You might think, all right, well, how am I going to get there? How long am I going to be there for? How am I going to get back? So you make your plan, and you try and stick to it in the best way that you can. And that way you're acknowledging the circumstances, you're practicing, and then, you know, when you come back, you can reflect on what you've done, just like any learning process. So yeah, boom bust. It's that's a bumpy ride. So you're trying to, I mean, it's always a bit up and down, but you want to flatten it. And one way of doing that is to make a plan each day, you know, and prioritize your activities and make sure that you've got plenty of recharge points through the day. So, you know, you'll know your own tolerances. So have a think about those. Think about the things that you want to do. Also, you know, tying in with the living well. It's amazing how many people tell me they don't do the things that they love. Now, some of the things you might not be able to do yet, but stuff like listening to music. So because I love music. You'll probably see from my Instagram, I'm always putting music stuff up there as well. But so I often end up chatting about that sort of thing with people. Oh yeah, I really like music. Would you listen to it? No, I don't listen to music anymore. All right, why not? Well, I just don't. You know, music has an amazing effect. So, but that's just one example of something that can bring joy. You know, if you're looking out for things that bring joy, it may be the first sip of a cup of tea or coffee in the morning. It might be the sunlight coming in. You know, there are so many things, but you've got to be attuned to that. And if you've got the kind of the film and the narrative playing of something else, it's much harder to notice. So you've actually got to practice. That's why something like a gratitude practice or journal can be useful, not just as a tick box exercise, but as a felt lived experience. So in other words, you know, at the end of the day, you've got your journal or notebook, and you just jot down 3 or 4 things that have brought you pleasure, joy, and as you jot them down, you know, you really think about it. You bring yourself back to that moment and feel it in your body. Feel that chemical change. There's a whole chemistry underpinning that. I think some people just end up, they say, oh, I've tried that. Oh, what do you do? Oh, you know, I jot down a few things. How long does it take? Well, it's 20 seconds. I'll just jot it down and then I've done that. Well, you're not going to get any benefit from that. I mean, that's just like writing a shopping list. It's got to be well practiced, and you need to be present and feel it. And that becomes your log, your evidence that you can go back to and read and think, oh yeah, I did that thing. Oh yeah, that was good. That was good. That was good. So you're starting to tip the balance, because essentially, if you've got persistent pain, your systems have got stuck, and generating and predicting pain in more and more different circumstances, there's stuckness. And what you're trying to do is to update those predictions so that you're feeling other things. So you go out and you find those things. I know, just a quick point caveat on that, of course, I'm always aware that as I'm describing this stuff, you may be thinking, God, he suggests it's really simple. It's not. These things are difficult. They're hard, but they're doable. And with practice, they get easier. Not easy, but easier.
I think that's the practice element. It's really important. It's something I certainly learned, that I talk to a lot of people who said, oh, I tried mindfulness. It didn't work. And you're like, well, how long did you try it for? So, well, it was a week. And I'm like, I've been doing it for 5 years and I'm, it's still a work in progress, because it always is.
Mm.
And I think I'm not going to say people give up too soon, because that's not what it is, because we're in a struggle situation. But sometimes it's very hard to have the faith in the process, in sort of keeping going with these things. Have you got any advice to keep momentum up, basically? Yeah,
definitely. There's a couple of things there. One is realizing your own measures of success. So people will give up because they're not getting the results that they want, but often it's because their expectations and reality are mismatched. So there's a lot of misunderstanding about mindfulness and meditation and why people do it and what it's for. People think it's for pain relief or to relax. I mean, it's not unreasonable to think those things at all. And if those are the things that attract you to it and then you start doing it, then great. But you need to understand some of the philosophy. You need to understand that it's about learning about yourself and the way that your mind works, and getting closer to the reality and seeing things for how they are, for being open to all experiences and riding them, rather than trying to push away the stuff we don't want and hold on to the stuff we do, neither of which works at all. So, if, as you said before, if something's happening, it's happening. You can't push it away. It's already happening. That thing that you love, that moment where you're feeling great, oh, I want to feel like this forever. You can't. You now suffer because you want to hold on to it. So just enjoy it as it's there, and then it'll pass, because it always does. So it's very much seeing things as they are. And that puts you in a very powerful position, because increasingly you develop that equanimity, that calm inside. And that's a great kind of yardstick. You start to feel this inner calm, and actually there's something really important about that inner calm, because our organs and systems in our viscera, so our heart, lungs and gut in particular, are sending lots of information up to the brain, and the brain's expecting certain things to be happening in those systems, but they are updating as to how we are. If you're in a protect state a lot of the time, if you're stressed, if you're worried, if you're in pain, then things like your blood pressure is high, your heart rate is up, you're going to be breathing a particular way. And all the information about that is then being fed back in to the system and kind of keeps that survival state going. So you get caught with this ongoing sort of prediction. Hey, we're predicting that heart rate's high, therefore something dangerous could be happening. I mean, it's more complex than that, but just as an example. So you start to use something like a breathing awareness practice, which fundamentally is parasympathetic, so it just starts to bring everything down. Restorative process, anti-inflammatory, healing, digestion, promoting sleep, all the stuff that we need to be well. You're then changing that flow of information from your body to your brain. So your brain will then, there'll be then this kind of mismatch. The brain's sort of expecting things to be revved and in this sort of survive state, because that's how it's been for a while. And then suddenly you've got this sort of signals about calm. What's that all about? And then the purpose of that is to start updating the predictions. So the predictions then are, maybe we're a bit chilled here. Now, we don't have access to all that processing, or indeed, your brain is not speaking like that, and your body systems are not speaking like that. What you will feel is a bit better, or a lot better. I mean, it varies. And if you practice these kinds of things, then they're skills. You'll get better at them. And something like a breathing awareness practice, you can do it for 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 2 seconds, 2 breaths, 1 breath, 10 breaths, whatever. But you do it consistently, so that it's a bit like plugging in, plugging in, plugging in, plugging in, plugging in. So just consistently through the day, you've got these recharge points going on. You're training your systems to go, some other stuff going on here. We're not always in this survival state. I thought we were. I thought we were just meant to be in pain all the time, said the body systems and brain. But no, maybe not. So in other words, this sticky belief that that everything's painful starts to get jostled, and that's where meditation seems to be really helpful. It's jostling these sticky beliefs, as is understanding what's going on and being open to updating what you believe in your situation. And we've also got psychedelics that are being experimented on. They are thought to be jostling the system as well, and hopefully there'll be some other things. But essentially, if you start feeling you're on a path of getting better, you're jostling those beliefs and starting to update your predictions. That's what you want. And you're doing it by creating evidence that you can feel better.
That's brilliant. That kind of follows Claire's question on quite nicely. And I think this is indicative of a very human response to pain and to, talking about how we recover. She asks, I know the answer to this, but it could be helpful for others. Be interesting to see if she thinks this later. So, where do I start in my journey of recovery? What things do I need to do? What order should I do them in, and for how long?
Well, I'm glad you know the answer to it. I mean, the thing is, you know the answer for you because it's unique, and there's dynamics on this call. Each answer will be unique to you, the person, and each person has to find their own way, usually with some kind of guidance and support and encouragement. So us as clinicians and therapists, we're guides. We're not fixers. That's definitely the wrong way to think about it. We don't fix you. You don't need fixing, actually. You just need guidance onto the right kind of path. And it's a collaboration. We do that together. We need each other in that process in many ways. So it's an equal and level playing field. This is, in my view, this is how it should be. And we work together to establish what that path looks like. And then, I'm alongside you, or whoever's alongside you, and then you'll drift off it at times. And we're here just to kind of ease you back on. I mean, I often use the sailing boat analogy that, you get into your boat and you want to sail to the island over there. That's your picture of success. And so you set your sail and your rudder and off you go. Fairly soon the wind changes, so you're drifting. So you need to adjust a couple of things to get back on, and you learn something there. And then it gets a bit wavy, so then you've got to adjust something else and deal with that. And then there's a big wave and you get capsized and you fall out your boat. That's when it's a really difficult time. But you learn the skills of how to get your boat back up and get back in, and you're tethered to it, so you're okay. And increasingly, as you practice these things, you know that you're going to be okay. Even though you're hitting a storm, you know you're going to be okay. That's a really different position to be in. So in other words, life has all these uncontrollable things: changing current, changing wind, changing direction, changing weather, we can't control any of that, so there's no point trying, although we do try. We really try and focus on our own skills, ways of thinking that are helpful, useful, resourceful, encouraging. Now, that doesn't mean we don't get the other thoughts, by the way. You know, the self-critic, oh, you're rubbish at this, you're never going to get better, you know, all of that stuff. You know, those thoughts come. Remember what we said before about it's not about what's happening, it's how you relate to it that matters. It's how you address that self-critic. Ah, hello, old friend, I hear you. But actually, I'm going to listen to this part of me that's saying, I'm going to be all right, and I'm going to work on these things. It's almost like we have our own board of directors, but the self-critic often has a sort of a loud hailer, and sort of drowns everybody out. But we just acknowledge that. We might just sort of gently remove the loud hailer and brush it under the table, and then listen to the, you know, think of the whys. So, you know, maybe you can think of someone who you know in your life, or know of, perhaps, don't have to know them directly, who you would consider to be very wise and compassionate. Can just take a moment to think of someone. And when you thought of that person, you know, sometimes it's a religious figure or spiritual figure, sometimes it was a teacher at school, maybe a parent, a relative, a friend, someone you didn't know who helped you one day. Anything, doesn't matter who it is. But if you bring them to mind, I mean, sometimes it's helpful to close your eyes and really, really see that person there in front of you. And just notice how you feel when you bring them to mind, when you think about the characteristics of that person. You know, you have those characteristics as well. How often do you water those seeds? So maybe you could just jot in the chat how you, I know it was only very brief, but how you felt when you thought about being with that person. Just tap in a word or two that describes what you felt. Calm, yeah. Anything else? Grounded. These are all really positive states. This is very healthy biology going on, and you've done it. You've done it because when you think about something or someone, or think about doing something, your body systems essentially act as if that's happening or about to. How powerful is that? You know, you can change your state like that. It's easier sometimes than others, obviously. But nonetheless, this is something you can do. Yeah, a place. A place, having a place where, you know, you felt safe and calm, feeling connected with people, feeling loved, feeling heard, feeling seen, all of that stuff. This is a skill. This is something that you can use as much as you want, because if you practice it, you'll get better at it. That's what I mean. There are so many tools, there are so many skills like this that you can use, drawn from many different fields, and to find the right ones for you that help you stay on your path. I got this book coming out. I think we're looking in December. I can say now. I'll be able to show you the front cover soon. But in the skills section, there's a whole plethora of stuff, and it probably doesn't. I mean, it's pretty hefty, but because it's not about saying, oh, the 7 steps to this, or the process of that, or whatever. It's about you discovering what works for you, what resonates. Some of the things may not resonate, but you give it a try anyway, and you might discover, oh, do you know what? That was really helpful. And none of these things are the end result. It's all about being on the path. It's a route of mastery. You're mastering yourself and your life. And you'll discover, you've probably already discovered a hell of a lot, but you'll discover a huge amount. Music. Yeah, I've just put in there music. Music's great.
It's amazing, isn't it? How chronic pain almost forces us to have better life skills. Forces
Well,
is maybe the wrong word, isn't it? But you know, it guides us.
Yeah, but it's almost like people, you know, have to get some kind of enlightenment to get to the point to do that. And that's largely because the messages in society are so wrong. So a lot of people don't feel that they can do anything, you know, they feel disempowered. They've just got to have the medication, the drugs, the things done to them. Now, those things can have a role, of course. I'm not saying they don't, but they're not the big deal. They're a very small part of the journey. You know, you can take a pill. That takes, you know, a second to do that. You might say, well, that makes me feel better. Okay, great. But you've still got to have the skills to live your life in the best way. And you probably don't want to be taking those pills for a long time anyway, because usually the ones people are taking are really, really potent, have a raft of side effects. There was someone asked a question that I saw that I just wanted to address. I think we've done most of them. Yeah, Jane asked what my thoughts were on pain reprocessing therapy. If you've read any of my blogs, you probably already know the answer to that. I think, you know, obviously there was a paper done on back pain using that, and they showed really, really good results. So 50, I think it was 50 people with back pain. Now, or chronic back pain. For it to become a recognized therapy, and there are zillions of therapies, and I'm never a fan of saying one therapy is the answer, because it clearly isn't for anything. You know, people have to find their things that work for them. So the data was very good on that, but it was for back pain. That doesn't mean it can be extrapolated to every situation with chronic pain. That's the first. It needs to be replicated by other groups. So that's on the sort of study basis. It's obviously picking up momentum. It's got quite a lot of coverage in the media. There's several books, I think, out, you know, describing it. I know a few people who have come to me, and they've sort of been dipping in and out of it. It's definitely being marketed, so I have a few issues around that. And pain reprocessing therapy, I mean, essentially when you look at it, it's actually stuff that people are already doing, just been given a different name. So it's kind of understanding pain and then sort of challenging your thoughts on it and doing things. I mean, that's what we've been talking about, but we've been talking about in a much more nuanced, unique, sort of individualized way. And reprocessing, I do have an issue with the idea of pain reprocessing on a fundamental basis. What are you reprocessing? You know, pain's an experience that you're having right now. How can you reprocess an experience you're having right now? That just makes no sense. Like, you know, pain is a need state, like hunger or thirst. It's there for information. Why do you want to reprocess it? I just don't understand that, and I haven't seen a good answer to that question. So I'm not convinced by it. Is my honest answer, which might upset some people.
I think it's always good to discuss these things. I mean, nothing should be set in stone, should it? I mean, I use a lot of those techniques very successfully myself, but you know, as you say, it's very individual. Part of what the concept is that pain is a conditioned response to something. So as a behaviorist, that kind of intrigued me, because I could very much see how my triggers, for instance, seemed to me to be a conditioned response. And that made sense to me, and that's, you know, fed into my recovery. But again, I think it partially comes back to the power of belief, doesn't it? And doesn't really, it almost doesn't matter what the reality is if it works.
It does, in as much as if we want to, you know, find more and more precise ways of helping people, which I think is an important endeavor, then we need the language to be right. We all need to be saying the same thing, and it needs to be rigorously, you know, understood or examined and understood. But For sure. Yeah. I mean, that's not to say, I mean, look, you know, a number of the things that I suggest to people have not been like that thing we did there about is there research with an RCT saying that if you think about someone who is wise and compassionate, will it help with your pain? You know, there is no paper as far as I know. I mean, maybe there is, but I doubt it. Yes, I'm saying but you've had that experience and you feel that change, because there's any number of ways of changing your experience because you're generating it. So you're learning to harness that in different ways. So it is based on the people predictive processing model, and there's a huge amount of work that's been done on that model already in different fields. So it's not completely out there. But to some people that might be, they might go, "Oh, that sounds a load of old rubbish."
Yeah, but I mean, we could have a discussion on the intricacies of pain research for a long time. It's
Absolutely.
I mean, I've been looking at a lot of papers with pain education, science education in, and it strikes me how badly it's being done, sort of on a global level, which is a real shame, as we know how important it is. But it's anyway we are at 8 o'clock,
Wow.
which has gone very fast.
Mhm.
And I just want to thank you again for a very interesting and quite wide-ranging this time discussion, and I really hope that we've given people something to think about, and hopefully some ideas of the many tools that are out there for people, if we can find them. There's a lot on the Footsteps website and on our YouTube channel, so check that out. I mean, Richmond as well, you've got a lot of resources available on your, where's the best place, Instagram? Or
yeah, I mean, I tend to use Instagram quite a lot, so that's just at Pain Coach, and then on my website, I haven't, I mean, there is quite a lot of stuff on there. Obviously with the book, I've been working on the book, so I haven't been writing as much in terms of blogs and things, but that will increase now because I'm sort of coming to the end of that. Well, actually, I'm starting a couple of new book projects, but that will cut. But also on Twitter, you'll find Twitter as well, and if you're on LinkedIn and Facebook, I've got a Facebook page, so and I just sort of put stuff on across all of those. So yeah, come and check it out. But I definitely post on Instagram pretty much every day.
Brilliant. All that information was in the Eventbrite information, and I'll add it to the email I'll send with the video, which I'm not sure how quickly I'm going to get it up, so be a bit patient with myself. But yeah, hopefully the recording will be up soon, and everything. So again, thank you ever so much, Richmond. It's been a delight, and thank you very much for sharing your time and your wisdom with us. We greatly appreciate it. So
It's all great to see everyone.
thank you everybody for coming. We appreciate it as well.